Psalm 94. We did verse 14 last time, right? For the Lord will not reject his people. He will never forsake his inheritance. It's worth me saying, you and I are his people, right? And Israel. I mean, current, today, right now, Israel. Israel, who is at war with Hamas in the Gaza. Well, okay. Verse 15. Judgment will again be founded on righteousness, and all the upright in heart will follow it. This is a promise that even though in the moment, things they are not right, okay? And I imagine you long for the day when justice will finally rule. The day will come. Probably not today, though. This promise, we don't get to choose the timing for the fulfillment of this promise. I mean, how many of the promises of God are there that we get to choose that? Some, I suppose. You know, there are some quite conditional promises that are on the condition of our, the condition of my heart, that actually it begins in my heart and it moves through my feelings, through my thinking, and into my doing. So there are conditions for many, probably. I mean, I haven't sat down and done an entire long, deep study, deep dive on the conditional promises of the Bible. I mean, maybe I should, but not today. Virtually all of the promises of God ultimately rest on the condition that he pulls the trigger. God pops the cork. I don't. You don't. The fact that what is happening is unjust is real, but it doesn't make this promise that judgment will again be founded on righteousness happen. Now, let's think about, and I know let's look at every little piece of bark on this tree, remembering that it is part of a forest. But for now, look at the tree. Judgment will again be founded on righteousness. Now, when the psalmist writes judgment, what do you think he meant? Well, there's several, at least two that I can think of, ways that it is right for us to think about judgment. One of the ways has to do with my ability to judge, to discern what is right and wrong, what is best and less than best. You know people who just seem to have a great sense of judgment. They, I don't mean to reduce it, but they pick winners because it is discernment. Judgment and discernment are kind of, don't know that I could say they're exactly the same, but they really are quite similar. I want to develop a keen sense of discernment, a keen sense of judgment. And in that sense, judgment will again be founded on righteousness. This becomes very personal. Excuse me. My own sense of discernment must be educated by both direct experience and vicariously. Now, a lot of times I learn most in terms of my direct experience through failure. Ooh, that did not work. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to experience the outcome of that swing and a miss, okay? And then there are other times when, hey, that worked. I want to continue that, okay? That's part of the process of growing maturity, is learning from both my failures and my successes, from both my swings and misses and my hits. Okay, that has to be educated by something. Often I think it gets educated by what I want. And I'm not sure that's evil. It's just inadequate. I mean, are you like me? I guess is my question. In that, often what I want is not what's best for me. So I want my judgment, this process of discerning, to be educated by righteousness, founded on righteousness. What's righteousness? Well, that's not that hard. Just break the word down. Rightness. Now, it's not, it is the point of righteousness, this kind of rightness, is not in the pragmatic outcome. It has to do with its moral value. And we can only judge something's moral value against God's design. That's what makes it. If it conforms with God's design, his stated commands, his stated plans, his stated will, it's righteous. If it doesn't, it's unrighteous. I mean, it's pretty clear cut. How do I learn his righteousness? How do I come to understand his design, his will, his way? Well, on some things, it's fairly easy because it's in black and white in your scripture, right? The one another passages in the New Testament make it really clear. These are things God's design calls for. Love one another, prefer one another, honor one another, on and on it goes. If you want some fun, type into your web browser, one another scriptures, and it'll give you this list. And I think it's mainly Paul and his letters that talks about the one another thing. Okay. There are other times when it is even clearer, where, and this is Paul writing, for this is God's will for you. Okay, like be thankful, be watchful and prayerful. There are some things that are just clear. They're not ambiguous. And yet there are other things that are quite ambiguous. Should I move to that town? Should I stay where I am? Should I change to that job? Should I keep moving forward with the job I have? What should I do about that relationship? It becomes a little bit fuzzy at times. But here's my thing. You learn about God's righteousness, his design, from Scripture. If you're not in Scripture, how will you learn his design? Now, for the folks that the psalmist was writing to and who wrote this poem for, it was clear. You go to the law. They're in broad strokes in Exodus, in minutia in Leviticus, and a restatement of it in Deuteronomy. These were the books of the law. History is Genesis and Exodus. The laws, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Those 5 books make up what's called the Pentateuch. So now if you want to impress your friends, you can use that term. Don't do that. It's too snooty. Okay. For us, yeah, there is that. And there's value in reading and studying the law. But there's a question here for us today. Are we bound by that? Well, if you read the New Testament, especially if you read the book of Galatians, you realize we're not bound by that. We are instructed, but we're not bound. Then what are we bound by? Well, I talked about this before. Jesus was asked, what's the greatest of all commands? And Jesus said, the greatest is love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. This was in response to a religious leader's question. Jesus was with his disciples, and he then reduced everything to this strong command: love one another as I have loved you. It really comes down to what binds up, what command, what righteousness is binding for us is love. All right, you discover that. And it's not like, boom, there it all is. I think it was Isaiah that wrote line upon line, precept upon precept. That's how it works. Now, there's another kind of judgment, and that's the kind of judgment that brings justice. This is what I think most of us long for. My experience in my own personal life and with others is that the kind of justice that we most long for is justice against our enemies. Not so much against us. Like when it's me, I mean, right, when justice is, I kind of want God to go, can you let that one slide? When it's against my enemy, I want to go pound away. Let them have it. Well, that judgment will again be founded on righteousness, rightness. And this is God's deal, okay? When I make a judgment on this in the justice sense, it has to be governed and informed by God's righteousness. Frankly, it seems to me our system of justice in America today is not. Well, whatever. You may think it is, and good on you if that's what you think, but there will come a time when justice will again be founded on righteousness. I long for that time for our country. And I long for that time in the broadest sense for our world. But let's be honest, when that happens, it's going to affect us. Because justice will call for consequence to my sin and bad choices. Well, okay, that's the tree. We'll try to look at the forest next time on Soul Care with Stevie.